with Katrina, who is showing signs of just some mild colic and discomfort. And I thought that I'd use this as a great example and time to talk about what to do when you think your horse might have colic. One of the first things that you can easily check is you're going to listen for gut sounds. So you want to just kind of go to behind where your saddle pad would be and just lay your ear on their side. Be aware if your horse wants to kick or anything like that, but Katrina's good. And you're just going to listen. So right now I'm not really hearing much. Oh, right there I heard a big gurgle, kind of like what it sounds like when your belly's empty or you're hungry in the middle of a big classroom and you really are embarrassed after. And that's what we're listening for. We want the big gurgles. You can move your ear a little bit. And I can hear some, but it's not as much or as loud as I want. And now Katrina just ate, so she should be having like a symphony in her belly right now. There was another one. All right, and then you just listen on the other side too. I like to always listen on both sides so that I have an idea of where it might be and just as much information as I can give the vet if I decide that that's necessary. So now this side's quite quiet. Oh, there was a big one. That's encouraging. There's another big one. That's encouraging. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do for Katrina is just take her temperature. So I have left Katrina out in her paddock because she's quite calm and happy and I feel safe doing everything with her out here. If you have a horse that's a little bit more cautious or worked up or hasn't taken their temperature a lot, then maybe you want to bring them into the barn or have somebody help you. So then we just wait until the thermometer beeps and we check the temperature. And ideally, a horse's temperature is right around 99 or 100. So hers is 99.1, so I'm not overly concerned about that. Usually if they're in distress, they have a very high temperature. Okay, so then the next thing that you can check is their capillary refill and just how her gums look. You want them to be a nice pink. You don't want them to be too white or too red. And then you can press on them and see how long it takes for them to go from white to pink like that. And it should not take very long. Another thing that you can do is check if she's dehydrated or anything like that. The easiest way to do that is just to go onto their neck and sort of pinch a bit of their skin like this and see how fast it goes back to normal. You want it to be really elastic. If it sticks straight up, kind of like really thick whipped cream when you're done with it, that's a really bad sign. That shows that they are dehydrated. And if you look at hers snaps back right as I'm done with it. So that's telling me that she's not dehydrated. So one of the other things, hi girly, one of the other things that you can do as long as your horse is not majorly in distress or going to be dangerous is just give them a few minutes on their own again and see if they're pointing at their belly like she just did. That's a sign that something's still a little bit bothering her. Or see if she'll go back and lay down or roll. As long as you think that they're safe, sometimes observing them is really helpful to understand what's going on and also more information to gather for if you call the vet. So we have decided that she is pretty much back to normal. I am going to keep an eye on her. I have sort of just figured out how many poop piles are in her paddock because she stays out overnight, and I will double check those in the morning and make sure that there are quite a few more because you definitely want to make sure that your horse is passing their manure. You want to sort of check the consistency of their manure, all of that, make sure it's not too dry. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how I noticed that Katrina might have had a mild colic. So a lot of times people that haven't really dealt with many colics, I think they just imagine that their horse is thrashing around and really like kicking their stomach and biting at their stomach, and like it's very obvious that they're not okay. And that is honestly rarely the case. If it is, then that 100% is a cause to call your vet right away and just make sure that your horse is staying safe. If they don't seem like they're going to be quiet laying down, then that's a time where you kind of heard the old horseman's tale of get the horse up and walk them, don't let them lay down. They might roll and twist their stomach more and stuff like that. That's when I would do all of those things and definitely call my vet as if it's an emergency. Since Katrina, I just noticed that after I fed, I was walking one of the other horses to their paddock, and she just was laying down, and Katrina lays down a lot. She loves to sunbathe and stuff like that, but she had just eaten, and this isn't the normal time for her to lay down. So one thing that's important is for you or your horse caregiver to sort of know what's normal for your horse. And we have a sign in our barn that sort of lists some normal and not normal things for our horses. Like the girls who live in stalls overnight should never be laying down when it's a full aisle. They aren't happy, they should not be laying down. If they're laying down, it's not normal. So that's in the not normal column. It is normal for the boys who live outside all the time to lay down all the time other than when you're eating or you're feeding them. They happily sleep a lot, so that's something that is normal. So once I noticed that Katrina was laying down when it wasn't a normal time for her to lay down, I just went over and I got her to stand up. I just encouraged her to stand up, and then I was able to watch her. I went about and did a couple other chores that were close by and noticed that shortly after I got her up, she was back down, and that's definitely not a normal sign. And then I just stood there for a little bit, just watching her, making sure I wasn't disturbing her too much, and I noticed that she'd sort of just peek over at her belly, and she doesn't do that. It wasn't that she was trying to get flies off. It was genuinely that she was looking at her belly, and then she'd look at me as if to tell me like, hey lady, this is not feeling okay. And then she'd lay kind of flat out like they do when they're really sunbathing, which it's not sunny right now, so that doesn't make sense to her. And if I talked to her, she'd pick her head up, but she wouldn't get up, and then she'd lay back down again and kind of very slowly kick her belly with her hind feet. So we did not choose to call the vet. I just went through all of the vital signs and everything was relatively normal. I brought her out. I had one of my lesson students brush her a bit, which can stimulate her belly and just kind of make her feel good and also give her some attention. And she passed a good amount of manure then. And then we just walked her around a little bit and put her back in her pasture and just kept an eye on her, and she seemed to resolve it on her own. So we from here on out are just going to keep an eye on her, and hopefully everything's all right. So knowing when to call the vet is really, really important. And what you want to think about is, if you have dealt with this before, you have a better idea. You can call them at any point. That's never a bad option. But you also want to gather your vital signs and get some information about what's going on with the horse, how long things are lasting, stuff like that. So you can always use a brief wait and see option, and if you are experienced, you can decide how long you wait and see. And if anything just doesn't feel right to you, call your vet, and they can sort of talk you through things. I do not give any medication unless I talk to my vet, because that might interfere with something that they need to do later. And I just want to get a clear idea of what's happening with the horse without any medication, so that then I can pass that on to my vet if I decide that later on that I do need them. So this was an awesome wait and see, and she seems quite alert. and happy eating her dinner hay. But just feel free to call your vet and do as much or as little as you are comfortable with, and always make the best educated decision for you. And I'm very happy to report that she seems like a happy appy. Hey, can you do me a huge favor and click on the subscribe button below? Also, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. You can then leave a comment about what you learned in the video or what you'd like to learn in future videos. Also, if you can share this video with at least 3 friends, that'd be fantastic.